Hey, Bill. Hey, Yvonne.
Hello.
Hey, this is Chip. How are you?
Fine. How are you today?
Doing pretty good, and yourself?
It looks like we have a short meeting.
Yeah, it should be. It's one agenda item, and it's pretty, shouldn't be a big deal. There's a pay bill. Should be, yes, sir. A presentation on their work, update. Hopefully it won't take us long. Mr. Manning, looks like I see you on the telephone.
How you doing, Mr. Jackson?
Hey, Mr. Livingston, how are you, sir?
How's everybody doing?
Can you see yourself on there?
Yeah. So I'm going to turn it so I can see me too when I move over here. But my mouse buttons are backwards since I'm a lefty. So
That's a floating head.
that's Mr. Jackson.
Allison, and
Hey!
the mouse button that's backwards. You said you're lefty.
I am a lefty. I am a lefty, so
The
my
wrong
mouse,
hand.
I got my button switched. If you haven't figured this out yet, I'm weird. I'm weird.
San Francisco. All right, thank you. Can they see me?
Yeah.
Well, it's 1 o'clock, folks, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our July 28th Richland County Transportation Ad Hoc Committee. Certainly want to recognize my committee members and others who are present. Certainly our chair of our council and member of our committee, Mr. Livingston, a member of our committee, as well as council, Mr. Bill Malnowski, a member of our committee and council, also Ms. McBride. I do not see other member of our committee, Ms. Myers. I'm not sure if she's on. I don't see her listed here. Also want to recognize other colleagues who have joined us, not members of the committee, but of council. Looks like we have joining us Mr. Jim Manning and also Ms. Chakisse Newton are the two other additional members of council. I want to welcome them as well. Always, excuse me?
Nope.
Also want to welcome our county administrator, as always, Mr. Brown, the assistant administrator, Mr. Thompson, as well as other members of the county staff, as well as our director of the Office of Transportation, Mr. Michael Niermeier, and his assistant who's sitting in the background because she's a lefty, Ms. Allison Steele. I want to welcome her and our guests, whom will be introduced at a little bit later time. With that, have called the meeting to order. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our last regularly scheduled meeting, which was on June 30th.
So move, Mr. Chair.
It's moved in second.
Second.
We moved in second. Any discussion? Hearing none. I guess I will call for the vote. Ms. Steele, are you going to do that for me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
We're having one issue with our sound. We're trying to get it
Okay.
worked out real quick.
Okay.
Turn that up all the way.
Allison.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Oh,
Michelle
Michelle is here. Michelle is here. I'm sorry, Michelle. Please forgive me, Michelle. I'm sorry. Let me thank
You're good.
Michelle, only our interim clerk of council, who's here and has always been here to take care of this. I apologize, Michelle. Forgive me. Michelle,
fine.
would you call for the vote on this motion, please?
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride, Livingston,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Myers.
Ms. McBride, did we lose you? You were here. I don't see you, but that motion passes. Ms. McBride was here. So, Mr. McBride, in case you're hearing us and we don't see you, want you to know that we've lost your connection. So I want you to be aware of that. Next on our agenda is the actual adoption of today's agenda. And with that, the chair will entertain a move by Ms. Mallon. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved in second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Only, will you call for the vote, please?
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride, Livingston,
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Jackson,
Yes.
My email.
Myers.
Yes.
And welcome, Ms. Myers. Ms. Myers, you're joining. Welcome to the committee meeting. That motion passes.
Thank you. You couldn't hear me before.
No, we did not hear you before. Sure not. I didn't see you on the screen either, though. Not only did I not hear you, I now see your name on the screen. I didn't see your name either. Welcome.
I had to drop out and dial in differently. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. That motion passes. Next on our agenda is item number 4, items for information. Today we'll have a dirt road program update, and I'll ask Mr. Niermeier if he will introduce our guest who will do that update.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson and members of council. I'm Michael Niermeier, Director of Transportation. Today, Mr. Jeff McNesby, one of the project managers who is overseeing all of the dirt road program, is going to provide the committee an update on the work that has happened since November, December, when council gave us guidance to relook at certain dirt roads that were stepped over before, and talk about the reach out to the community and the property owners. And then at the end of his presentation or his discussion, and he can answer any questions you may have on how we're going to move forward. Mr. McNesby.
Mr. Jackson, can I ask a quick question before we begin?
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Myers, you sure can.
Thank
You're
you.
recognized.
I didn't get, was there any written material to go along with this briefing? Because I didn't get any.
Ms. Niermeier?
No. We didn't put together any information to go with this since it's information only. We're still trying to sift through the PDT files that are a little bit in disarray. So we're trying to put everything in order right now. So we didn't want to.
I understand.
Yeah, we didn't want to give anything that was only halfway accurate.
Mr.
Yes,
Jackson.
ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Jackson.
Yes, Mr. McBride, you're
I was
recognized.
disconnected, so I don't know whether the roll was called and everything, but
Yes, ma'am, Ms. McBride, and I acknowledge that you were here and then got disconnected. The only thing we've done so far, we approved the minutes from the June 30th meeting, and we've adopted the agenda, the only 2 items we've covered in your absence.
okay, if I don't say anything, it's because I don't know what's going on, but I've been disconnected, all right?
Okay, we haven't had anything to happen since you've been reconnected, though, is what I'm
Okay.
saying. We're just beginning with the first item.
All right, thank you.
Okay, yes, ma'am, thank you. Okay, with that, we'll go back to Mr. I guess, are you fine, Mr. Myers? Okay, thank you. Mr. Nesby, would you please, McNesby, I apologize, excuse me.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Jeff McNesby. I'm the project manager from Transportation overseeing the Dirt Road Paving Program. What we're talking about today, we want to break it down into 2 program areas. We're going to have years 1 and 2 packages, and then the years 3 and 4 packages. So in the years 1 and 2 packages, we've completed construction on 20 of their dirt roads since the creation of the transportation program. While a number of the roads were previously dropped from consideration, we were asked by County Council to reconsider, reevaluate 21 dirt roads that were looked at as possibly being redesigned, and with the goal of trying to get those roadways moving forward. So we mailed, starting last fall, we mailed letters to 331 property owners living on the 21 dirt roads. And interestingly, of the 331 letters that were mailed out, only 6 of them were returned stating that the property owners did not want their dirt road paved. As these 6 roads were spread among the 21 dirt roads, all 21 of the dirt roads met the minimal threshold of 75% consent to move back into design if so interested by County Council. Based on this positive feedback we got from our community, we're recommending that the Ad Hoc Committee recommend to County Council that they direct Transportation to relaunch design work on these 21 dirt roads. And again, just for as more additional background on the 21 dirt roads that were previously stopped, 15 of them were stopped due to our inability to obtain fee simple right-of-way. 4 of them were stopped due to some design issues, and 2 of them actually made it into construction where field issues were identified and the projects were removed from consideration at that time. So again, our goal with these 21 dirt roads is to give back to the property owners who previously denied us right away. Talk to them about their concerns to see if there's any changes we could do to the roadway to perhaps move it back forward into construction. Some of the internal discussions we were having was some of the property owners felt that we were taking too much of their land. So you'd have your road that would be paved to 11-foot lanes, and then you have a shoulder, and then often 2 roadside ditches. If that was considered to be too much or would have too close of an impact to a home, we could always look at narrowing the profile of that road at that location, maybe doing some paved valley gutters, which is basically just having like a B section of asphalt that can keep the runoff within the roadway itself. So we're optimistic that we can take a number of these 21 roads and actually move them back into construction. But again, it's all based off of how you guys would like us to proceed. And if you're ready, I'll move into the years 3 and 4 dirt roads. So following council's direction to relaunch design work on the years 3 and 4 roadways, we have begun work with the on-call engineering teams to review the status for each of the roads assigned to their team. Our goal is to try to get the projects moving from design and into construction. We are revisiting, and so there's 5 on-call engineering teams, and each of them has been assigned roughly 10 roadways, while one team had 12 roadways. A number of the designs assigned to those teams were dropped at some stage during construction. There's 62 roadways in total in years 3 and 4 packages assigned to the 5 teams. 11 of the roads were dropped due at the consent denial stage, which basically is telling us that there are quite a bit of people who don't want the roadways paved in front of their house for various reasons. 27 were dropped during the design or right-of-way acquisition stage. And again, these are perhaps the roadways where we can make some adjustments and try to get them moving forward. 24 of the roadways were dropped during design, and some of the design issues that were identified was houses are too close to the roadway. That occurred in a number of the roadways. So again, we've went through the 62 roads. We're identifying what the issues were, what the opportunities are, and how best to get as many of them moving forward as we can. Again, looking through some of the, we've had initial meetings with some of our on-call engineers. We had one engineering team that was assigned 12 roadways. Out of those 12 roadways, 11 of the roadways dropped. So when Alice and I sat down with the on-call engineer, we talked about why did 11 of your roadways drop? And some of them were very simple issues where maybe one homeowner didn't want the road paved in front of their house. So maybe we can adjust the roadway, or some homeowners said that we're taking up too much of their front yard. Again, maybe we can narrow the width of the roadway. So we're looking at a lot of opportunities to move quite a bit of these roads forward. As it stands right,
let me interrupt you for a second. One of my council members has his hand up with a question, Mr. Malinowski.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, I'll wait until he's done because my first question was back on the first part.
I apologize. Yes, sir. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. McNiven.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Well, no, we're essentially done. We're just, our goal again is, as it stands right now, I can give you a rough number. We have 62 roadways, 12, 23, 29, 35, about 38 of the 62 roadways are moving forward. And our goal as a team is to try to take those to a much higher number, hopefully in the 40s or 50s. So that's what we're working on at this time.
Yeah, to follow up with what Jeff is saying, our goal is looking back through the PDT's notes and why they dropped things, drop roads from the program. We believe that we can go back and actually address some of the simple issues and get some of the roads that were dropped back on the list to move forward with. We feel that we can overcome the issues that they were facing.
If you have questions on specifics, we can try to answer them as best as we can.
Okay, Mr. Malinowski, you want to go back to your question, sir?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question on the roadways for years 1 and 2, he started the presentation by saying that council asked them to reevaluate 21 roads. I would like the minutes and information from that particular request by council sent to me, please.
Okay.
Also, in the second part of his presentation, years 3 and 4, he says that some of the roads, people didn't want to, and it was probably 1 and 2 also, but they didn't want to give so much land away for the right of way. It was felt the road maybe was too close to the house. Well, and that we could narrow the road at that point is what I'm hearing. Well, if you make an exception for one, seems like you should be consistent and the road should be the same for all. Not that I give you 30 feet from my property, but the guy next door only gave 10 feet of his property. That's my
Yes.
concern with that.
Yes, sir. That's a fair request. And again, we're at the stage now where we're just starting initial discussions. We have some notes from the PDT on their previous discussions with the property owners, but the files again don't contain a lot of information that we would deem necessary to make a decision. So as a group, we want to go back to the property owners and talk to them ourselves and to figure out what exactly were their concerns. We're just speculating that, what would be the opportunities or how can we satisfy their needs? In many cases, some homeowners just want to be heard. And that's our goal, is to start there, to talk to them saying, we understand previously that you did not want your roadway paved. What would it take to have you sign over right away to the county?
And when we discuss changing the road width, we do mean we would change the entire road cross section. We wouldn't just change it in front of that one property owner to make them happy. If that's what was required, we would make that the standard cross section for the entire roadway length.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Mr. Jackson.
Ms. Myers, you're recognized.
Yes, sir. Thank you all for going back, first of all, and doing this. It's very important, and those people I know appreciate it. So my first question is, can you please provide us a list of what roads you've gone back over? I know you said it's years 1 and 2. I don't have that list before me. I'd be grateful if you could provide it.
Absolutely.
Okay, and thank you. And then secondly, as to, we discussed some time back, alternate methods of paving, because you haven't talked about the budgetary impact of this, but I'm coming to that because obviously we don't have unlimited funds, and we know that we started with, I think $40 million to pave all these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of roads, and we all know that the way we're doing it, it costs between $300,000 and $500,000 to pave each one. So, have we gotten any movement on exploring alternative means of paving that might be less expensive?
We haven't. What we typically are going with is the low volume manual that the county created years ago when the program was started. That's really the only guidance we've had to go by. I'm not really sure. I haven't looked to see if that manual was referenced in the referendum, and that's what we're confined to. I can do some research, and if we're not confined to going by that low volume manual, then maybe we can look at alternatives. Yes, ma'am.
There's nothing in the referendum that requires you to use a specific, it doesn't require that. So yeah, if you could look at that before we expend all this money, because that means that, we will run out of money long before we run out of roads.
Yes.
Long before. So that'd be
only
helpful. And then my last, go ahead, I'm sorry.
The only comment I was going to say is if we do an alternative method, say we put down some kind of like slag, it's something that lasts longer than gravel, but it's not going to last as long as asphalt. Yeah, our maintenance crews would have to go out there probably once or twice a year at least to renew the material we put down.
Right, but that's for the materials that we're aware of. Right.
Yes.
So there are other people who've got this problem who are using more, more technologically sort of advanced methods that seem to be providing some promise. So if you would look into that, that'd be helpful because it would allow us to spend more money to make our money go further. And then my last question, as to the engineering, are we using? So you said that we were going to see if the problem, the problems in design were that people just didn't want to give up that much road, or this, that, what to try and figure out what their exact questions were. But we did say when we had this discussion initially that we were going to look at designs that were less strenuous. And I guess that's what you're describing in the manual, the county's manual. But have we gone back and scaled down the design on these roads, or are we still at that high-end sort of interstate style design?
That's what we're going to be addressing, reaching back out to the OETs. As Jeff said, we are just now getting them to relaunch the programs, and we are definitely going to ask that they look at, value engineering. We want these to be the most cost efficient, let's go with the absolute minimum standards we can for a safe road, but we definitely want cost efficient value engineering performed on them.
So they're not using the designs that we had for those roads then?
They are using the very minimum allowed designs for safety, a minimum lane width, things like that.
No, I hear you. I'm just making sure. I just want a clear answer as to whether or not they're using those initial designs that was sort of the Taj Mahal for these dirt roads.
I'm not sure how far any of these 3-4 roads we have really any designs that have gone really that far, but we'll definitely have them change them if they're, like you're saying, we don't need interstate Taj Mahal. If they do have plans that show that, we will definitely have them do a more cost-effective design. Absolutely.
I'd be grateful if you could circle back with some clarity on that. Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Mr. Malinowski, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Myers' comments brought something up to me of a concern here, and that is if individuals on a particular road initially decline to have the road paved, it somewhat seems unfair to me that they get a second bite of the apple before everybody has had the opportunity to have the first bite. And I would think we should go through all the dirt roads and find out who wants them and who doesn't. And then those that have turned it down initially, if there are funds left, we could go back and ask them. At what point do we draw the line that you've got 21 that didn't want it, and now you've got maybe 4 out of those 21 that don't want it? Well, are they going to have a third chance to get it before somebody else has the first chance? So I think that's something we as a council need to decide before any work begins on those roads that were initially rejected. Thank you.
Yes, I hear you, Ms. Malinowski, and I agree with you in principle. I guess my concern is that this is the third iteration of someone being assigned this dirt road project. And so now that the in-house group has the responsibility that they took over from the PDT, who took over from another group, I'm not sure that what someone said to one of those earlier groups may even still be valid in terms of their declining, because they have not declined it to this group who's now in charge. And so my concern would be is that if the approach, as Allison and Mr. McNesby suggested, that was made to them by these earlier groups was one that was so aggressive that it forced someone to turn it down, and now our approach is going to be radically different and much more customer oriented and much more environmentally sensitive, they might be more inclined that we might ought to consider that first before we just dismiss them, someone who declined this 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago.
Okay, thank you for that thought.
Yeah, well, thank you for yours as well, though, sir.
Great.
Yeah. Other questions, comments from the group?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. McBride.
I just want to caution us because we want to be the most cost-effective means. But I know oftentimes we use not Richland County, but cheaper products are used, and there's constantly rebuilding. And the citizens are saying, why is this road always tearing up? So I caution us in terms of cost effectiveness and not settle for cheapness that doesn't last long.
Right.
Thank you.
Good point. Thank you, Ms. McBride. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Well, thank you very much, Mr. McNesby, and thank you, Ms. Steele, for that presentation. I want to echo something Ms. Myers said in passing. She suggested you circle back, but I would like to officially ask from the committee that once you have sort of done some of your research, Ms. Neal, that you officially circle back in a formal presentation way, as well as consider the next time maybe the handout that would be available to the group would be sort of an update from what happened today to that point. So it would then start taking on the ownership of your committee and no longer sort of what you're trying to interpret from PDT, but moving forward. Okay. So thank you very much. Next on our agenda is an item for action. It's item 5A. It's the Clemson Road Widening Project Waterline Deeds. I think it's pretty straightforward. To those of you who read the packet and see what it's about, I think you would agree. But in any event, because it's an ordinance change request, we're going to present it. Mr. Niermeier.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Yeah, so this will actually require 3 readings. So before you is the deed over to some utility lines to the city of Columbia. This part of the Clemson widening project included the building of these water lines and construction of them. As they get turned over, or as we move forward and get completed, it has to get deeded over to the city. So what's before you is the legal reviewed, not stamped yet, I'll add, document, the deed that the city presented to us, and discussions with, or talking to legal about it. Once it gets through committee, it'll be formally stamped in form, and then it can move forward to county council for first reading.
Questions or comments? Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I've got 3 questions and or comments. And
Sure, sir.
one is in the discussion section of our agenda on page 6. It says about the city requires these water lines be deeded over to them so that they can abandon the old water lines. Well, will these old lines be removed or just left in place? And then I'll ask the second part of the question at the same time, if that's all right. And then who's responsible for those lines if something should happen with them?
As far as them being abandoned, I'd have to I can look at the construction plans and let you know for sure. You do have 2 options, the option to dig them up and remove them, or you can cap them and leave the old ones in place. That's actually a pretty common way to go. Because it's obviously a cheaper option, but I can certainly check the construction plans and get back with you on a final answer on that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not going to be responsible for something left behind because the city said just leave them there.
Right. Well, fortunately, they won't be in use any longer, so there won't be any maintenance. But I'll definitely double check. As far as maintenance, until we have the 3 readings. And get these signed by both agencies, they are the responsibility of the council. This is why we were hoping that council will have a meeting in August where we can at least get the first reading going and not prolong it an extra month. Because every day that ticks off, we are responsible if anything happens to these new water lines.
Okay, in the actual, I guess I'll call it the deed transfer, it starts out for value received. What is that value and should it be put in here or not?
That I'm not sure about. If anyone is from legal.
Hey, Mr. Malinowski, it's Elizabeth.
Hey, Elizabeth.
Value received would actually be, the city taking these lines and doing maintenance. We wouldn't need to put a number or anything down.
Okay, just so that it's clear to somebody.
All right.
And my last questions and comments would be from the last page of the deed, which is page 12 of our agenda. It says that down at the bottom after be all measurements, a little more or less, it says this paragraph is null and void upon completion of the Clemson Road widening project. It seems to me that I don't have all the details, that if we're putting, let's just say, for example, 3 miles of widening in there and the water lines are in the first mile and we're done, we're still responsible, even though we're nowhere near these lines. And somebody else could be coming along and digging a trench for some other reason and hit the pipe, and they're going to make us responsible, is the way I read that. So I just kind of thought maybe we would be able to tighten it up a little bit and indicate that, hey, when the line is in and done, we're done, and it's up to you to handle it.
I'll speak to that. We worked on that language. That whole paragraph is new language the city put in as deeds. They don't usually have them in those waterline deeds, but we did try to tighten it up. It was something that I pointed out, and I believe transportation went back and forth with the city, tried to get it taken out altogether. If you're not comfortable with it, we can keep working on it. You can still do first reading tonight in your special call on this, and we can try to see if we can get that language amended by third reading. If we can manage it. I think it probably works for us. It's not my favorite. I prefer other language, but I think we could probably get away with it. But if you're still concerned with it, we can work further until third reading. We can keep working on this.
Well, I would like that, but in the same paragraph, there's also language that says that the grantor, in connection with initial installation of streets, paving, curbs, and gutters, storm drainage lines, sanitary sewer line, utility lines, final grading. These items, to me, if, like I said, if you have final graded here and you've moved down the road, they've got nothing to do anyway with water lines. And when you look through this particular agreement, every paragraph starts out with a description and the words water lines. So I don't know why this is in here if we're responsible for water lines. I can see us being responsible one time for complete finishing and grading, but not to be held responsible after that, because somebody could come along and have a car accident and a tow truck drives over it and breaks the line or ruins the final grading, and they're going to say, well, here it is in your agreement, Richland County, you've got to pay for that. Never mind that tow truck. So that's why, again, I'm not so sure if there's a little too much in here that we're responsible for.
I think I don't disagree with you, by the way. I mean, I think their purpose of this was to make sure if we come out there to do anything while we still own these lines and something happens, that we'll take care of it. Now, having said that, I told you I hated this language to begin with and I wanted it removed, but we will attempt to go back. I'll work with Allison and Kim Tony and see if we can't come up with something better that would make it a little clearer anyway.
And that's fine. I don't mind being responsible for what we should be, but beyond that, I don't think we should have our necks out on the line. Thank you, Ms. McLean.
Yes, sir.
A follow up to that. I want to make sure I'm clear, Mr. Malinowski raised some interesting points, Ms. McLean. Are we saying that even though we said just a few moments ago that once we get through 3 readings in a public hearing, the lines belong to the city, that there would still be some future obligation or responsibility if someone went and damaged the lines on the property that is now owned by the city?
No, sir. We were actually trying to make that clear in the language that once this deed is executed and filed, we have no liability left regardless of what happens. The city is trying to make it clear that until we turn it over, it's our responsibility. If we go out there to do something and we damage it, I think Mr. Malinowski didn't like our language change, and that's fine. If it's not clear enough, we can go back and try to change that. But no, we're trying to make it clear we have nothing to do with it once the deeds are signed.
Well, that's the point I wanted to make, that the discussion centered around between now and when we get through with this project. Once we're through with the project, we no longer have responsibility regardless of what happens.
Correct.
Okay, so we're clear about that. And so
Yes,
to follow on that, Allison, Michael, how long are we anticipating that this project will be ongoing before we can reach some point of completion?
Let me look up percent complete on this really quick.
While you're looking that up, Mr. Chair, can I also add something? For
Yes,
example,
sir, by all means, sir.
Thank you. For example, I think it was the last night this morning, a water line broke somewhere in the city, maybe 2 knots or over in that general direction. But here's where my concern is, that if we're going to be responsible for damage to their lines, good grief, we all know their lines are ancient and in need of repair or removal anyway. And I don't think we should be held responsible or liable if something happens to one of those existing city lines either, because we may not even be there, have anything to do with it other than time and age has caused something to happen. So that's why I want to make sure we're covering our own bases here and not taking on more responsibility than we should be.
Absolutely. I wasn't disagreeing with you, though. I totally agree with Mr. Malinowski. I was only commenting on the other once we completed. That's all. But I totally agree, sir.
And if I could jump back in, I'm sorry, Mr. Malinowski. The language actually speaks to damage that we cause if we go back out there to do any road construction. So it says county, its contractor, agent, or any party acting on our behalf. So I mean, I think we're pretty good. We don't intend to go back out there after we've done with that part. So, I mean, I think the chances are slim this is going to come into play, because I actually checked with transportation to make sure we had no intention of going back out once we finish the work there. So, but I absolutely understand what both y'all are saying, and we'll make sure the language is clear.
Thank you.
Mr. Niermeier?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Yeah, the project's scheduled to be complete in January of 21. So it's progressing extremely well. So that's the date that we're working with now.
So the window of risk is about 5 months, 4 to 5 months.
And only if we are actually on site and,
Gotcha.
doing work on somewhere near a water line, but yes.
Thank you, Ms. McLean. Thank you very much, Mr. Niermeier. Thank you, Ms. Malinowski, for your question. Any other questions or comments regarding this subject? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion regarding this matter.
Mr. Chair, move forward for this before the council on tonight's agenda for approval, first reading.
Been moved and been second. Any discussion? My only discussion would be comment that I'm going to say, Mr. Malinowski didn't have to say it, but I'm going to say it. Do not allow this to be presented to full council without it being stamped by legal. Do not present it. Do not have it in the packet, because if it does, Mr. Malinowski will not have to speak to it. I will speak to it and not approve that and move forward. So I want to be real clear on the record. That's something we've been struggling with. We're not going to struggle with that going forward. He's made it clear it's not currently stamped by legal. It must be before it gets presented and included in the packet. Any other discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Only, would you call for the vote?
Sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Passes.
Motion passes. Thank you very much, folks. Thank you for your presence today. Mr. Malinowski.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one last question before we leave, and it's, I had someone ask me, they wanted an update on actions that we took previously at the full council. And that was in May, when we voted the approval of the de-scoping projects that were presented to us by staff. And my recollection is that that was unanimously approved. And so the question is, that approval means that staff or transportation department here can move forward with everything that was related to all those projects. Is that correct? That's the way I interpreted that.
That is something that's going to need to come back on our agenda. The short answer is yes. However, there are 1 or 2 projects where there are some cost questions that need to be represented so that there's clarity. Because I've said on the record that even though we approved the de-scoping, I learned after that there are 1 or 2 projects that may still be, in fact, above the referendum amount. We may still want to go ahead and move forward with them because the overall funding level is okay, but I don't want that to be interpreted by anyone that the presentation was made with the understanding that there were 1 or 2 projects that still did not fall under the referendum limit. And so what's going to happen, I've asked staff to bring those back to this committee, specifically those 1 or 2, and so that we can address them. And if we vote to keep them as they are, fine. But I wanted to be real clear that that will be done in the scope of full transparency.
Okay, I guess my question is that if council approved moving forward, why is somebody bringing something back to the committee for review and not presented to the council to do it?
No, I mean, it will be presented to council. That's what I'm talking about, not to the committee.
Oh, okay.
To the full council. To the full council.
Okay, so that'll be there sometime in the next couple months, I guess.
I'm sure it will be, sir. But no, I meant, if I said committee, I apologize. I meant to be presented to full council.
You did. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Brown?
No questions, Mr. Chair, but I heard what you said, and that is my understanding as well, that there are no items that are moving forward. There are items that would be over the referendum. All items would be under the referendum. Any other additional decisions would be made by the council, and that is the final decision from me as the administrator as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
If nobody has anything else, I'll move to adjourn.
Move in a second.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Mr. Only, will you call the roll for adjournment?
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
It passes.
Yeah, motion passes, meeting adjourned. Thank you folks very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
great
Thank
day.
you.